I have another section of John Owen that I would like to share with you. It is from his 6th volume, treatment of the subject of temptation. And the particular part to read is from page 119 and 120 of that volume. And it's particularly with reference to the types of temptations that we find in the ministry, Christian life in general, sort of spiritual, pride, and so on. I trust it will be a challenge to you as it is to me. So Owen writes these words. In particular, a man begins to be in repute for piety, wisdom, learning, or the like. He is spoken of much to that purpose. His heart is tickled to hear of it, and his pride and ambition affected with it. If this man now with all his strength ply the things from whence his repute and esteem and glory amongst men do spring, with a secret eye to have it increased, he is entering into temptation, which, if he take not heed, will quickly render him a slave of lust. So was it with Jehu. He perceived that his repute for zeal began to grow abroad, and he got honour by it. Jonadab comes in his way, a good and holy man, now thinks Jehu, I have an opportunity to grow in honour for my zeal. So he calls Jonadab to him, and to work he goes most seriously. The things he did were good in themselves, but he was entered into temptation, and served his lust in all that he did. So it is with many scholars. They find themselves esteemed and favoured for their learning. This takes hold of the pride and ambition of their hearts. Hence they set themselves to study with all diligence day and night, a thing good in itself, but they do it that they might satisfy the thoughts and words of men, wherein they delight. And so in all they do they make provision for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. It is true, God oftentimes brings light out of this darkness, and turns things to a better issue. After, it may be, a man hath studied sundry years with an eye upon his lusts, his ambition, pride, and vainglory, rising early and going to bed late, to give them satisfaction. God comes in with his grace, turns the soul to himself, robs those Egyptian lusts, and so consecrates that to the use of the tabernacle which was provided for idols. Men may be thus entangled in better things than learning, even in the profession of piety, in their labour in the ministry, and the like. Some men's profession is a snare to them. They are in reputation, and are much honoured on the account of their profession and strict walking. This often falls out in the days wherein we live, wherein all things are carried by parties. Some find themselves on the accounts mentioned perhaps to be the darlings and ingentia decora of or glory of their party. If thoughts hereof secretly insinuate themselves into their hearts and influence them into more than ordinary diligence and activity in their way and profession, they are entangled, and instead of aiming at more glory, had need lie in the dust, in a sense of their own vileness. And so close is this temptation that oftentimes it requires no food to feed upon, but that he who is entangled with it to avoid all means and ways of honour and reputation, so that it can but whisper in the heart that that avoidance is honourable. The same may be the condition with men, as was said in preaching the gospel in the work of the ministry. Many things in that work may yield them esteem, their ability, their plainness, their frequency, their success, and all in this sense may be fuel unto temptations. Let then a man know that when he likes that which feeds his lust, and keeps it up by ways either good in themselves or not downright sinful, he is entered into temptation. End quote. Well, there's so much in that to apply, isn't there, brothers and sisters? We often think of temptation as being something to do with lust in the moral sense, Well, here it's lust in the spiritual, ministerial, or reputational sense. A much more devious temptation than the obvious type of thing. So may God help us and deliver us from these things. I was thinking of this especially in the context of in a day that we live where preachers and so on have so much prominence and are given so much praise. The danger for them that is indeed heaped upon them by those who surround them, treating them like pop stars and so on. We have to be so careful. And as Owen says, better for us to lie in the dust and confess our vileness than to experience such temptations and to give in to such temptations. Well, may the Lord help us and may the Lord grant to us deliverance from these things in his name. Amen.